director, I know my angles.
All right, Jon Favreau, were you at all intimidated or nervous about taking on The Jungle Book, a live-action adaptation of not only a beloved animated classic from Disney, but also beloved story from Rudyard Kipling?
Yeah, I mean, it's always you're always a bit intimidated when you're dealing with material that people feel so connected to. The Kipling was 100 years old, so there's most people that I encounter are more connected with the 67 animated film, but the source material of both are very well known, and there's incredible divergence between the two of them. So you kind of can't get them both square on at the same time, because Walt took a lot of liberties with the material and created new characters. And so you're kind of dealing with the memories that people have of what they grew up with. And music was a big part of what people connected with as well. And so figuring out a way to make all of them work together and take advantage of the technology that's available and make an adventure film that would appeal to the audiences that you have to appeal to when you're making a movie like this. There were a lot of bowling balls to juggle on this one.
Right. I mean, even if it wasn't based on this beloved material, it would be a daunting challenge for any director just because of the sheer technical aspects of it. I mean, you're dealing with a live-action boy, CGI animals, the jungle. So how did you even begin to figure out how you were going to put this together?
Well, I've learned a lot, and I've always wanted to emulate what Pixar had done. They've inherited the process from kind of what Walt Disney was doing. I'm here in the animation building now, actually.
Oh wow!
Disney, and upstairs he used to have a room called the Sweat Box, which was a theater, and they would screen dailies of pencil studies of different sequences that the story department would come up with. And so I felt that, especially having been through a lot of effects films where you don't want to rush the work, because a lot of what people don't like about CGI is when the work is when they're more ambitious than they should be as far as the time frame or the scope of the work. But if you plan it really well, the way that like a Pixar movie does, and everything is worked through methodically, and you give the artists enough time to do it, you could really come up with some pretty wonderful imagery. And so I wanted to have a story department. I wanted to structure it like you would for an animated film, whether it was done back during cell animation or as Pixar or Disney Animation does now, and work our way in from there. So when we started, we got our story department sketching. We started working on the script, and we had artists do some compelling keyframe illustrations that showed what the finished product might look like. And if you look online, or there's a book called the Art of the Jungle Book, we try to compile a lot of that. And that honestly becomes a really good beacon for where the film is going. You get a glimpse of moments of how things might look years in advance.
Right. Now, I mentioned the live action boy. Talk about finding the right kid to play Mowgli.
Well, Neil Setti was the kid we found, and he really wasn't an experienced actor. He had responded to an open call. His family brought him in to put him on tape. I think he was like the 2000th kid we looked at, and I needed somebody who was going to remind me of Mowgli from Jungle Book from the animated film. The way he moved, his personality, his physicality. I remember growing up really feeling like Mowgli was a real kid and not a character out of a cartoon. I think as they cast the director's son as the voice, and the animators really captured a gangly, that age just right, that kind of awkward phase in life, and he's just kind of becoming. He's transitioning from being a kid into being a teenager, and it felt very authentic. And I wanted to find a kid that felt authentic and real. And whether it was the voices or Mowgli, I wanted actors that brought a tremendous amount of naturalism and humanity to the role to help fight against the artificial nature of having so much digital work done and so much keyframe animation and so much rendered in so many rendered environments. I felt like we needed to bring as much humanity into it as we could, and Neil's charisma and his quality as a performer, I think, contributed to that.
Well, how did you, as a director, help guide him through interacting with these CGI animals? I mean, what was that process like?
I've been on a number of these sets, and I've been an actor on a number of these sets, and eye line is very important, and oftentimes it's treated like just a visual effects plate shoot where you're looking at a tennis ball on a stick, and I've certainly asked actors to do a fair share of that, certainly with the Iron Man movies. And if you have somebody very experienced like Gwyneth Paltrow, she was very good at reacting honestly to situations that she didn't really fully comprehend, and I would ask her to do different things and react to things that were off camera. And, but that's a skilled actor who's been doing it for a long time. In the case of Neil, I didn't want to have to put him through that. Even myself as an actor, I have difficulty doing it convincingly. And so I tried to create as organic of an environment as I could. And one of the techniques we used that worked really well was bringing in puppeteers, because puppeteers have a very good understanding of the technical aspects of, they could look at a monitor and hold up the puppet and line things up properly. They're asked to do a lot of that when they're performing, like on Sesame Street or something. They have to watch themselves on a monitor and act with another puppet. So they're they have very good spatial sense as a rule. That's part of their training. And also when a kid is interacting with a puppet, they tend to kind of spark, they light up. If you ever seen a kid talking to somebody who's operating a puppet, they never look at the puppeteer. They always look at the puppet's face. And I thought that was really helpful. And so it gave me the ability to have improvisation on the set. I also had actors on the set who would be off camera for the kid, so he wasn't just reading with the script supervisor. And sometimes I would even jump in there and be his scene partner, something I was used to doing from working with a young actor on the film Chef. So, we kind of mixed and matched it, but the whole thing was not to let Neil get bored and keep him engaged. And as long as his wheels were turning, he was fascinating to watch. And so he eventually developed chops over the course of the film. And by the end, he was a really solid actor that I could treat like any other journeyman performer on a set of a movie.
Well, take us onto the set a little more in depth with all of these technical challenges. I mean, even with all the planning that you did, were there still daunting hurdles that you had to overcome in the shooting of this film?
I don't know if I would use the word daunting. It's like a big puzzle. It's kind of fun. There was the whole sense that this whole thing could collapse, though, like a house of cards. If everybody didn't do their part, if there was a weak link, and you were taken out of the reality of the moment, you never felt that these were real creatures and characters you were watching, I think the film would have just been a visual effects spectacle and not a story that could move you. And I think if you're not connecting on a human level with the characters on the screen, it's a different type of experience. It wasn't what we're going for, certainly not what the Jungle Book warranted. And so there was nail-biting moments. I think a lot of when we showed the first finished footage at D23, which is the big Disney convention in Anaheim, that's when we knew that we were on the right track, because people really responded well to it. So once they bought the talking animals and they bought the environments and they felt like they were looking at something real, we breathed a sigh of relief and could really redouble our efforts, knowing that we were not doing something that was going to ultimately fall apart in front of an audience. And so once we had that confidence, it made the process a lot more fun, because we weren't quite so skittish about the whole thing.
Well, it certainly helps that you had a great voice cast for all of these animals. I mean, Ben Kingsley, Bill Murray, Idris Elba, Scarlett Johansson, Christopher Walken, on and on and on. Talk about finding the right actors to bring these characters to life and make them more than just CGI drawings.
Well, I think that's the key. I think if they feel like they're CGI characters, if they feel artificial, you lose one of the more important dimensions of making a movie like this. You want people to feel like they're watching a real film. So in casting actors that have where you get the sense that they're very their performance is naturalistic. It doesn't feel like a heightened. A lot of times with animated films, the performances will be more robust than they would be in a natural live action performance. And so I tried to keep it all very conversational. I tried to get the actors in the same room working together. I tried to cast actors that had tremendous humanity in their voices. And, like Lupita Nyong'o brought so much emotion to that character, and it helped fight through the design, which is very naturalistic of a wolf. But wolves don't really express a lot of emotion. You have some around the eyes, but if you do too much with the face, it starts to break it. You hit some uncanny valley. And so it took people like, Ben Kingsley and, of course, Bill Murray has a tremendous personality in his voice. Christopher Walken has a very distinctive, specific and emotive voice. So the casting was meant to help the visual effects, if that makes sense.
Well, it certainly does. It helps give these characters a life. Now, in creating the visual effects, how in depth of how involved were you day by day in guiding the visual effects and post-production?
I mean, it was a full-time job. It was there all the time. We would often, there was a room where we would connect, because we had artists all over the world working on this. And so in the morning I would link up with London, and then in the afternoon I would link up with New Zealand, and I would look over. I remember Andrew Stanton over when I was up visiting Pixar, he said it's very important that you have dailies with the animators. I think a lot of directors who are working on live action features just kind of turn it over and let the work happen. In our case, I had smaller sessions with the animators as though they were actors almost. And then we would look at other shots, like environments that were meant to be approved or shots that were being rendered. So in each sequence, we had different shots in different phases of completion, because you have to stagger the work, because you only have enough animators to work on one sequence at a time. And then when the animators are done with it, then it goes into render. So you're constantly, and then some things are just being explored for the first time. So it's very rough. So between all of those different sets of responsibilities, I found myself there all day, and it never got boring. I always enjoyed it.
You've directed a wide variety of films throughout your career. The previous film you did before this was Chef, which was about an $11 million budget, I think, and this is close to $200 million.
This was a little bit more money than Chef,
to say the least.
I was good on this one.
What attracts you to the projects that you take on as a director?
I can't really put my finger on a quality of it. I think, though, and I'm guessing because it's a gut feeling. I think it has to do with how interesting it is. Like, if you are curious about it. So, for example, like on Chef, I like watching cooking documentaries. Mm-hmm. I like the chef culture. I like to cook. I love food. So I knew that me going through culinary training and wading into the world of chefs would be something that I would find interesting and fun. And so from beginning to end through release, and even to now, I still loved, I continue to love learning from chefs and spending time in kitchens and cooking on my own. And that level of curiosity helps get me out of, my kind of lazy mode and into obsessive mode, because I kind of only have two gears, I think. I think one is where I feel a little bit bored and drag my feet, and the other is when I can't get enough of something. And I want to pick up a subject or a movie where no matter how much I do it, even if I'm exhausted, I want to hit it the next day again. And that's one of the luxuries, honestly, that I have now from having done the work that I've done, is I get to be selective about the projects I work on, and it's got to be something where it feels challenging and it feels exciting, and I feel like I'm doing something I haven't done before. I think that's part of what I like to do, and I like world building too. And really, Jungle Book, you don't get more world building than that. You are literally building a world from nothing, and and then you get to work with all these great artists who can, you know, contribute all these great ideas, and you get to be there at the center of it all, reviewing the artwork, the footage, the performances, and then it all comes together after a couple of years, and then you get to put it all in front of an audience and then get to see the reaction, and that's the big payoff.
Absolutely. Well, Jon Favreau, thank you so much, and congratulations on the film. It was a pleasure talking with you.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you too.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Thanks.